In this video, I'm going to be filming insects. And to do that, I've come here to what has been called Britain's rainforest, Canvey Wick. Now it's been called Britain's rainforest because it's got more species per hectare than anywhere else in the country. So I should be able to find plenty of insects to film. I was walking through the scrub down this path and I came across this little patch of bare earth and I found these long fin wasps, probably Ammophilus, which is a solitary wasp that hunts caterpillars, and it digs burrows into bare areas of ground. Unfortunately, these wasps are very active and are landing for like 2 seconds and then taking off again. So I've been here for about 10 minutes and not really got much so far. But by filming in slow motion, a top tip for filming insects, I did manage to get a couple of nice clips. This one having a bit of a clean before it then took off. And I got a clip of this one sitting on the ground before an ant came along and scared it off. You might find it quite odd, but I'm actually using this setup to film it with, which is my 150 to 400mm Olympus lens with the 2x teleconverter, which isn't your typical insect capturing equipment, I suppose, but it focuses down to a metre, which means I can get quite close up to the insects without actually getting close enough to flush them. Another thing I've spotted here is a type of ant. It's a larger species of Formica, I believe, which looks a bit like a wood ant, but it's a little bit smaller, although bigger than your average garden ant. And they're doing a lot better at finding caterpillars than the so-called caterpillar hunting wasps. First I spotted this ant dragging a smaller caterpillar. It showed the great relative strength that ants have as it dragged it through what to it was the equivalent of boulder-sized rabbit poos, lichen forests and moss scrub, some of which it managed to pull up at one point. There was also this group dragging a much larger caterpillar. They too were dragging it across the obstacle-covered terrain, which the caterpillar seemed to be getting caught on. But with persistence, they dragged it closer and closer to their nest. And this ant seemed to have part of a woodlouse. This site at Canvey Wick is actually an SSSI, which is not that unusual for a nature reserve, because a lot of nature reserves are protected under law. But this site is a brownfield site, and now it is a thriving ecosystem for all sorts of invertebrates, but also birds. I've heard nightingale and cuckoo today, and I don't know if you can hear it because I've got the microphone on and it's quite windy, but there's song thrushes, blackcaps, chiffchaffs, everything singing away. But yeah, I'm going to just keep wandering around and see what else I can find. So this area here is actually tarmac and concrete, with lots of plants that have grown through. So it's not your textbook wildlife habitat, but the reason it's so rich is because basically since the 1970s, when they started to develop it and then stopped halfway through, it just got left and nature reclaimed it. It does take some management to keep it rich. You have to keep on top of the scrub a little bit, but yeah, it's a thriving ecosystem. But because of its brownfield status, it has at various times been in danger of being developed. But thankfully, it was designated an SSSI in 2005, which has granted it some protection, and then the land was acquired by the Land Trust and saved from development, and is now managed by the RSPB and BugLife. I've moved on to this next area, which is more of a meadow habitat, and there's a couple of species of butterfly here. There's this common blue. It was feeding on one of the small flowers before it got chased off by another common blue butterfly. And I also spotted this smaller butterfly, which from the way it was flying, I worked out was a brown argus. Once they land, you can see the brown colour, but female common blues can also be brown. But the smaller size and a dark spot in the middle of the upper side of the front wing show this is in fact a brown argus. And I also got this pyrasta, day-flying moth. There are a few species of these small moths, many of which fly in the daytime as well as at night. And I also spotted a small heath butterfly, which I think look like mini meadow browns. They often sit low on vegetation or on the ground with their wings shut, but this one did spend some time feeding on the forget-me-not too. So in various areas, those managing the site have scraped up material into these mounds, which act as areas for bees to nest and encourage certain plants to grow and create microhabitats. And on one of them I just found a brown argus and common blue butterflies sat next to each other, which is very nice. It's mid-May, which is the start of the peak of the insect season in the UK, which goes on to mid-June, July sort of time. And one of the best places to look at this time of year is round hawthorn or mayflower bushes. You'll quite often find the blossom on these plants buzzing with insect life, but it's a bit windy today. However, I did find this, a green hair streak, arguably one of our best looking butterflies. It sat posing in a number of places. I even managed to get a bit of a close-up. It then landed on the hawthorn flowers, where it started feeding, before it went back to posing again. I went back on myself through the meadow and came across this common blue butterfly crawling around on the ground, ingesting minerals and salts which are an important part of its diet, but are not in the nectar that they drink from flowers. I'm just walking through the reserve and the winds are really picking up now, and there's not many insects on the wing anymore, so I'm going to go and try and find a sheltered spot and see what's there. We can see what sort of a mixed habitat you got here. There's a bit of a reed bed there, there's woodland behind me, and then I'm at the path, and now I'm on a round circle of tarmac with a tree growing in the middle. It's amazing habitat. I've come down to this path here because I know it's quite sheltered. There's trees either side, so that should keep the wind down a little bit. Also give me a bit of shade, 'cause it's getting quite warm today. But there's still plenty of light to keep the insects active and help me film them. There were little patches of buttercups which were being visited by various pollinating insects. The first insect I saw was this muskid fly, which seemed to be cleaning its mouth parts with its legs. There was also this bulrush clubtail hoverfly feeding on the buttercup, and this buttercup blackette hoverfly, a good name for a black hoverfly on a buttercup. I was just filming a hoverfly and this bee fly turned up, which was quite nice, but it didn't hang around for long, sadly. Now, if there's one insect you'd expect to find in the dappled light of a woodland path, it's a speckled wood butterfly. And there's two, make that three, another one just with four flying around in this little patch here. One did land in a sunny patch, like they normally do. But by now it's getting really hot. And I'd had a good morning, so I decided to call it a day. A great trip around this wonderful site.